Hello and welcome to Special People, Extraordinary Times. A few days ago, a plane load of special people had a very extraordinary time. A plane load of World War II veterans were taken to Washington, D.C. to visit the World War II Memorial and some of the other World War II sites. And they had a marvelous time. The veterans were thrilled to be able to go. It was all expense paid by an organization who does these honor flights. That's what they're called. This honor flight was Southern Florida's honor flight. And this group went to Washington, and this was their day. I interviewed the Schechter brothers, Commissioner Carl Schechter and his brother Saul Schechter, who were both Army veterans who went on this honor flight. And I talked to them, so let's go and see what they had to say about the day that they spent on the honor flight. Today we're here with Saul Schechter, who was on that honor flight to Washington, and he said it was the best day of his life. I don't know if it was the best day. Was it the best day?
I repeat, it was the best day of my life.
Okay, I believe you. But there were days when you were in Italy during World War II. Were those the best days?
Well, I'll tell you, there's some of the days I will never forget. But let's go back in time to when I was drafted. I was 18 years old, and I get a little note, welcome, greetings. And
Greetings.
I was 18. I've never been away from home. I used to be home 11 o'clock at night was my limit. We never were out of the house. And this is the first time, and I was so excited, I didn't know any better. And my mother and my father took me to the Myrtle Avenue subway elevator, so I can go down to Whitehall Street, and that's where I was inducted out of there. And my father took me around, and the first time in my life that I ever saw my father sob and hug me. He was so broken up. I never saw that, even when his mother died, when we lived on Lafayette Avenue. But I was so taken aback by that, and I went down. I went to Fort Dix. I went to Camp Landing, Florida. So they sent me to Georgia, and then they sent me to wherever it was. I even forget where it was. But finally, they put me on a ship in Newport News, Virginia, by myself. And let me tell you, I was a scared young man.
Of course.
I went on the ship. I knew nobody, and I ended up in Naples. Naples. I landed in Naples. And when we landed in Naples, I go back a lot of years. I'm 91 years old, but I still remember certain very important parts of my life, and that was one of them. When we landed in Naples, Mount Vesuvius had been dormant for 300 years. It erupted the day I landed. And as we were coming off the ship, we walked on drums, barrels with ropes, walking towards us, and they had these balloons where German planes were flying over, and we landed, and all those ash from the Mount Vesuvius was falling down on us. And I walked. The next day, we got up, and the streets were like 3 foot deep of ashes. That was my introduction to Italy.
You had adventures before you had adventures.
Before I started, but I didn't know I had any adventures as far as I didn't know anybody. I was alone. And I was very hurt because I was alone. I felt that I didn't deserve this. All my friends were not with me. They went to France, and I ended up in Italy. So in any case, Italy, to me, I was a replacement. As a replacement, when they used to look at the bulletin board every morning, if your name was on there with a company, you went out. I was there for like 6 months. And I was on KP, and I was doing so many different jobs, but every day I'd look at, my name wasn't on there. I says, when am I going to meet somebody who I know? So finally,
What year was that, Saul?
that was in 1943. And then finally, no, it's 43. Yeah, I went on April 7th, I think, in 43, and this was like the end of 43. And then finally, my name is on there, and boy, I tell you, I was so glad to see my name, I was going up to the front.
You were happy to do that.
I was happy to just do something. And I was young, and I was adventurous, and I wasn't at all scared, because I was stupid. Anyway, we ended up, and we got as far as Montecatini, not Montecatini, and they dumped us out, me and another guy. And as we're standing there, and the first sergeant is taking our names to put us on his, and I'm talking to this young kid in the truck that took us up there. They took us up and they dumped our bags on a road, and he took off and left. And I'm standing there with this young kid from Tennessee, and the sergeant is writing down our name and our serial number, and all of a sudden he says, "Hit that hole, 88s." 88 was the most powerful gun that was known, and still is. The German 88 gun was one of the best weapons of the war, most accurate. And I jumped into a hole, I put my whole big bag on top of my head, and I'm laying in this foxhole like a dog. And all of a sudden, one comes in, and it hits the other foxhole where this kid from Tennessee got in there. And there wasn't one piece left of him.
Oh, my goodness.
And I said to myself, wow, this is the introduction to war. How in the world am I going to make this, you know? And I said, just remember, somebody tomorrow is going to knock on that young kid's door, and his mother, it was real sharecroppers, you know? And she said, we regret to inform you your son was killed in action. That was so touching to me, I couldn't believe it. I was crying for the kid. Because we were just in the truck, the two of us, I had a little talk with him, not much. Anyway, next day, I joined my outfit, and that's where I started. And we started going, and we went up to as far as Bologna.
And what did you do? What was your job?
I was a rifleman. I was an expert rifleman. But then they put me in doing anything. I was climbing telephone poles and putting up wire, It was anything I did. That was... So we get to Bologna, and like we used to do maybe 100 yards a day we used to advance. And the next day we would get kicked back 50 yards. It was a hill, and a mountain, and it was very trying. From the time I saw so many different cities. I think back now, Palermo, Pisa, Verona. I can't even, I remember them, but I don't remember them. And when I saw the Tower of Pisa, that was sometimes, and there was a church right next to it. I was looking at that church. They built that church just to see that Tower of Pisa. And the guy says, that Tower of Pisa was built 400 years after that church was built. Beautiful church. Anyway, I finally went to Bologna. I got as far as Bologna, and that's where I was with my company. And you couldn't go through Bologna because Bologna, they said, was mined with so many mines that it would take 100 years to be able to clear all those mines out. So all I know is that the next day, the Engineer Corps came out. They had about 12 men with bayonets, and they were just along the road, the one main road coming out of Bologna, and just poking it in the ground until they hit, and then they would dig it around and take out that mine and put it on the side, both sides. And there must have been 5,000 mines that they took out in a matter of 2 days. All these young men, digging with and then when they finally got the last mine out, we went through Bologna, we went into the Po Valley, we did 75 miles in 1 day. And
Walking? Riding?
Riding. We were in a truck riding 75 miles in 1 day. And we got there, and we captured horse-drawn artillery, we captured wax, German wax, and that's basically about when the war almost finished then.
And so this trip to the War Memorial brought it all back
Yes,
to you.
it did. It really did, because I tell you, when I saw that war memorial, and when I sat next to Bob Dole, Senator Dole, and I took him around and I gave him a kiss, and he kissed me, and I said, Senator, I want to tell you something. I look at you, and I'm so proud to know you, that you're a senator. When you used to get up and talk, and I listened, you know? He says, I'm going to tell you something, Saul. I had my badge on you with my name. He says, I just give you credit for what you've done for this country, because it's something that they just plucked you out of your family and took you away, and you were gone for 3 years. And I'm so pleased and gratified to know you. But it was very rewarding to me, and what was exceptionally rewarding to me is when we landed. When we landed, they told us, yeah, everybody's going to be in a wheelchair, and you're going to go down 2 rows with the wheelchair. So they let all the, and it must have been, you know, where the people have the different gates they have to go. There must have been like 300 people in there, all waiting for planes. They stopped all flights. And when the plane landed, they had fire trucks shooting water sprays over the plane. It was so exciting to see these fire trucks riding by and all the rainbows from where. It was just exciting when we landed. So I saw these people, and they had the Scottish band, you know, with the bagpipes, and they walked us off the plane all through that area where, you know, you board planes, and it was, oh, there must have been 200-300 people there easily. But we didn't realize that when we got into the, where you sign up for your tickets, there were 3,000 people there. 3,000 was in the
Waiting for the plane.
waiting for the plane, just to welcome us back, and it was so touching. People on the behind those ropes were crying. Men were reaching out and touching my hand and crying. You know, thank you so much for what you've done for our country. It was a wonderful experience. I'll remember it all my life, and whoever I speak to says the same thing. They'll never forget it, and I certainly won't.
What a wonderful thing for the country to do for you
Well,
guys.
it was something that I don't believe they did this for any of the other ones, because I know Jack Russo, a friend of mine, he went 2 years ago, and they only had about maybe 35 people went on it. He said, we never had that kind of reception when we got back. We got back, it was nice, but not a reception like I saw when you got back yesterday. It was unbelievable, really. I'll never forget it.
Thank you, Saul. It's my pleasure to
My
be with
pleasure.
you today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're back. We just spoke with Saul Schechter, who was in the Army during World War II and spent his fighting time in Italy during the war. And now we're going to speak with Carl Schechter, who's going to tell us about the actual flight. Carl Schechter is here with us. Commissioner Schechter was on that flight, that honor flight to Washington, D.C., along with, what, 75, 76 other
78.
people?
78. Yeah.
So what was your itinerary on that honor flight?
Very full and very.
One day.
One day. One day. We were told to be at the airport between 5 and 5:30. But it worked very well. I've never seen any plan as well structured and as well organized and as well executed as this one.
It's nice.
Everything was right down to the minute, and with no pressure, nothing. Everything was done smoothly and comfortably, and each veteran was given a hat
Oh.
like this. And it's an interesting story. There's a woman who donates these hats to every flight of veterans that goes to Washington, D.C., and she's there. And she personally comes and gives you a hat, and it's very nice.
Nice.
Now, I must say, I have to thank Honor Flight for having, this was created by a group of pilots who realized that World War II veterans who are dying at the rate of 1,000 a day are disappearing. And some of us may never have an opportunity to go visit the World War II Memorial.
Absolutely.
And so they've created the Honor Flight, which the veteran is the guest of the organization. And
Oh, so the government doesn't do it?
government has nothing to do with this. This is privately funded and privately run. And that nobody connected with Honor Flight gets paid. It's all volunteer. There are no administrative costs. The only cost they have, of course, is chartering a flight, which was done with Eastern Airlines. And I must say Eastern Airlines was very, very nice. The plane was new. The staff was as friendly and as helpful as could be. And the flight was lovely. So we get to the airport, and we don't know, we're going to go through Washington, D.C. airport, which is very crowded, very busy. As we come out off the plane, there's on both sides of the exit, as we're coming out in our wheelchairs, we're all in our wheelchairs, there are people on both sides. There are men in uniform, there are civilians, there are women, there are children, and they're all standing there applauding. Some of the women, some of the men are crying. Thank you for your service. They're reaching out to us and shaking our hands and patting us on the back. It was such an overwhelming emotional experience. To have these people come out at 9:15 in the morning, they don't know us, they never saw us. And it was at that point in the trip that it occurred to me that we were once 18 years old. And it took me back 69 years ago.
Yeah.
When I went into the service, I was an 18-year-old kid. I got the same greetings that everybody else got from President Harry Truman. Greetings. I said, well, the president is writing to me. Wonderful. So, and I know I listened to Saul, my brother, and when my father took me to the Union Station, he had the same, he just could not deal with his 3 sons all being in the service at the same time.
And his son-in-law?
And his son-in-law. My sister married a young man named Howard Zinn, who was a bombardier in the Air Force. I don't know how many missions he flew, but he did his service. And my father was in World War I. He was a soldier, U.S. Army, World War I. And I never thought of myself as coming from a military family, but
It's the way
I guess
it
we are.
worked out.
3 brothers and a brother-in-law, my father. So from the airport, they took us by bus to the World War II Memorial, which is a sprawling, huge memorial in the form of a circle, and representative of the United States, that on one side, it's the Atlantic side, and on the other side of the circle is the Pacific side, all one closed circle, of course. And there are columns, and each column represents a state. And it's all so, again, it brings back so many memories. And the World War II Memorial, I think it deserves the space and the place that it has in Washington, because it's a monument to man's survival. World War II was, I think, the last good war that anybody ever fought.
Yep.
And only because there was a madman loose in the world and had to be dealt with. These other wars are economic and what have you, but this one was a war that had to be fought and had to be won, and was. We mobilized 16 million troops. I think we have about 1.1 million left in this country. World War II veterans and they're dying at a very rapid rate. But that's life. That's life.
Yeah.
And then from there, we went to Arlington Cemetery. And this is a huge, There are 340,000 people buried at Arlington and counting, and counting. And the highlight of the trip to Arlington was the changing of the guard. The tomb of the, I think it used to be called the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier,
Yep.
is at Arlington, and it's a granite slab of block. And it's no longer referred to as the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier because it doesn't represent just one soldier. It represents all soldiers who were lost and could not be accounted for. And on the tombstone is inscribed, here lies a soldier known only to God. And very touching, very emotional. And then you watch the honor guard, and he marches with great precision with a rifle on his shoulder, which he walks 21 steps from one end of the tomb to the other, 21 steps exactly. He stops, makes a complete turn, changes the rifle to the other side, remains stationary for 21 seconds, takes 21 steps back the other way, repeats the process back and forth.
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day, 365 days a year, there is a guard walking that tombstone. And when we got through with that, and you look around and you see, we were one of 3 flights that day. And we all pretty much came together at the Iwo Jima statue. And it was, that was the next stop. And I look around and I see all of these old men. And again, it occurred to me at that point, watching that flag being raised, this is the generation that we come from. We
Yep.
served, and it was our duty to serve, and we served with honor. And the name of the honor flight is aptly named. People from all walks of life, veterans who now old, but still veterans. And so we came home, and we got on the plane, and 6:45 or thereabout. We fly home, and we have to go through the entrance. We're all in wheelchairs. By this time, we needed wheelchairs.
Yeah, it was a tough day.
Yeah, it was tough. It was a long day. It was not a tough day. It was a great day, but it was a long day.
Sure.
And we come out, and as we go past through the gateway, there's a brigadier general from the Marine Corps waiting to shake hands with each of us,
Oh, my.
thanking us for our service. And this guy looked like a Marine, I have to tell you. He was the epitome of a Marine. And we go
Like
through
your brother Ben.
like my brother Ben. My brother Ben, may rest in peace. We go through the portal, and as we come through the portal, there are 3,000 people waiting to greet us, waiting for several hours because our plane was delayed. And just overwhelming from little 6- and 7-year-olds to grandmothers, all reaching out to us. One little girl came over, took me around, gave me a hug. I cried. Such a sweet, and she put her head on my shoulder, and then, it was, anyway, it was just, my family, of course, was there waiting for me, my wife, my daughters, my grandchildren. And it was just the whole day,
Memorable.
memorable, never to be forgotten. And I texted my son Jay, and I thanked him for being with me for the entire day and looking after me like I needed it, which I don't, but he thought I did, and he watched me like a hawk. And I said, thank you, my son. I will always remember this.
And so will he.
And he texted me back, "So will I, Pop." And
Sure.
that was the end of the day. It was a lovely, lovely.
What a day.
What a day. What a day.
What a wonderful thing for a group to do.
It was. It was, and they're now, I understand that Honor Flight is in 173 cities and does this very same thing for wherever they can find them. It's more and more difficult to
Yeah.
put together a flight, but they do it. And
You were a large group.
we were 78, but they're planning on April 2nd, they have in Florida the largest honor flight that they ever had. They're planning to put together a group of 240 veterans, and they will have, I asked, how many planes will you need? They said one. They will be flying the largest plane in the world that will accommodate over 500 people. And that's what they will have. So each veteran, and this, I just want to make this point as we close, I think that each veteran also received, in addition to the hat that I pointed out, each veteran was given a T-shirt, Honor Flight, Washington, D.C.
Nice.
And the tagline was, "One last mission." And it was.
Put the hat on.
So, okay. There I go.
Nice.
I would like to thank Saul Schechter, Carl Schechter, and all the fighting men and women who were in World War II and did what they had to do. For OCTV, I'm Elaine Kugelman, and thank you for joining us today on this honor flight to Washington, D.C.